Well, some of the first questions that I ask a producer when I get called for a job are, what camera are we using? What format are we shooting in? Is it location? Is it stage? Um, what are what's expected? Is it going to be a location shoot with 5 company moves in a day, or is it going to be um, a location shoot that's up on the 3rd floor of a building that has no elevator? Um, or is it on stage? So um, those are my first questions, and then it kind of goes on from there. Well, for the DP, I like to ask, how does he like to expose? How does he like to determine his exposure? Does he like to use his eye? Does he like to use tools that are built into the camera? Does he want to come to my tent to see the image? Does he want to look at waveform? Every DP kind of has their own tools that they feel comfortable with, and I can understand that. And so knowing what he uses as his gauge for exposure helps me do my job. And then when I reach out to the first AC, how does he like to reload the camera? Does he like to make changes on the camera when it comes to frame rate, or does he like to be hands-off and only be in charge of focus? Different first ACs and camera teams work in different ways, and so it's important to be on the same page and accommodate as much as you can, and so that's what I try to do before we start.
When I get a call for a job, I have to ask a lot of questions. Now I'm learning that I have to ask more questions than I originally thought I had to ask. I had always confined my questions to what are we shooting on camera-wise? Is there second audio? So is there a mixer that's going to be recording a second sound or separate sound? Um, what do you want me to do? Or am I there to just back up the footage? Am I there to back up and transcode it or um, sync the audio? Am I there to do a one-light color correction? And to what deliverable am I going to send it off to post? So those are the questions that were kind of primed for me. Now I go even further. Um, are we on location? Are we in a studio? Will we be making moves? Will I have to pack up everything and go to another location? And if so, how many times? Um, will I have, if I'm on a location, will I have coverage for my DIT equipment, or will I be out in the rough? Will I have my own blackout tent? If I'm doing color correction for the dailies, I need to be able to see sufficiently my monitor on set. I can't see it properly, and I can't judge color or exposure if I'm in the open with light, stray light hitting the monitor. I really can't see anything. So that's one important thing I need to know. If they're doing dailies, how are dailies going to be handled? Am I handling the actual creation of the dailies, the H.264 files? And if so, how? I've had jobs where I created dailies, but they weren't exact specification that production needed, which meant I had to redo them, which cost more time and energy on my end. Um, these are all important questions. You almost have to find uh, um, or have a laundry list of questions to ask and make sure that you're covered. So as long as you have all of the proper cameras that you're going to be shooting on, the different kind of deliverables, what their expectations are you color correcting, not color correcting, sound syncing? Do they want scene and take names on dailies? A lot of questions need to be asked, as opposed to just what kind of cameras. Um, but you want to make sure that they give you a complete list, and maybe you want to have them sign off on it. So if there is any surprises, that you're not really held accountable. Now, I've had a job recently where they had a different camera for one particular shot. Well, I didn't have a card reader for that particular camera. It wasn't something that you normally use. And I had to have production scour around the city trying to find a card reader, at the last minute. So these kinds of things can be avoided if you do probe the the production people, and they may have to go then ask. So you need enough time to have all this done. It can't be done at last minute. Not asking the right questions before production starts can be um, problematic for a DIT, because once you end up on set and you don't have all the information or you were unprepared for it, that's when things can go wrong. It could slow down your entire workflow. Like, for instance, if you don't know that you're doing a move, your entire production is going from one location to another, or maybe 3 locations, then that will affect your work and it can make you have a bad day. You'll end up staying over just trying to, or after wrap, just trying to finish up your work. If you don't have the right workflow requirements that they want for, say, dailies creation, you're going to have to sift through email after email of instructions on someone trying to give you what you should have gotten maybe a week before production.
Pre-production is everything. The prep is absolutely essential. Anybody that tells you not to prep an event prior to shooting is really asking for it. Usually, typically, you'll find yourself backtracking over technical details that were missed. And the preparation, in my view, is key. I think the producers respect it. I think the director of photography respects it. It overall creates a seamless, more or less transparent set of workflow parameters in place to alleviate any technical downtime that may be unforeseen in the future. It does happen. Cameras go down, cables get dirty, monitors break, stuff falls off carts. It happens all the time. Cameras get dropped. Been there, seen it, done it. And for the most part, if you're technically prepared prior to a large-scale event, usually those mishaps can be circumvented.
The duties of a DIT will vary quite widely depending on the type of project that you're working on. If you're working on a commercial, the sort of standard practice is you get a call from a production person or the producer saying, hey, we have a 1-day to 5-day commercial. We will get you in touch with editorial. So I'm very sort of hands-on when I do commercials because I like to keep everybody in the loop so we all know what the deliverables of the job are and that we make sure that we fulfill those obligations properly so it's smooth sailing all the way through post-production to delivery. So I'll get a phone call, I'll ask for the delivery specs, I'll look over the delivery specs, I will contact the post-production person, talk to them to verify the specs to see if there's any discrepancies in what they're looking for. We'll find out how many hard drives they want to copy the material to. We'll also find out if they need transcoding of the image from a log type of image to some sort of transcoded material to a DNX HD file or to some other flavor depending on what editorial needs and what their dailies deliverables might be. So I also contact the sound department to make sure that we have the proper sound either on the digital files or separate. That's very important depending on how editorial wants them. I'll also contact Video Assist to make sure what they are going to be providing as far as monitors so we don't double up any type of equipment to save the production some money. Then I will also contact the camera assistants to make sure that I get my order in for any type of technical gear that we need. I have my own gear, but a lot of times we'll supplement depending on the job and depending on how many extra monitors or any specialty items that they might need. In the feature world, it's very similar. We will get delivery specs. We'll go and prep the cameras, usually for a couple of days to a week, depending how long the feature is. We'll interact with the DP a little more on a feature about what his workflow will be, how he would like to approach on-set deliverables, on-set color correction, on-set viewing. So one of the things that we do on a commercial prep, which is very important, is take the camera through all of its settings. If you're doing any high speed, put it into the high speed mode, run the camera, test the camera, make sure everything is functioning perfectly. Then you check all of your S/S cards if it's an Area Alexa shoot. If it's a red shoot, you check all of your SSD mags. You also check all of your cables. On some feature films, you might have miles and miles worth of BNC cables, and you have to make sure every single connection of these cables works perfectly, because when you're in a situation on a feature or television show, even commercials where you're running and gunning and you're moving very quickly between setups, you can't have a piece of equipment fail on you, because the amount of time it takes to troubleshoot it, find out where the problem is, and to fix it could be the difference between them getting a shot and not getting a shot. And a lot of fingers will be pointed in your direction, which sometimes doesn't really feel so good. So you have to make sure that all your gear is in perfect working order. The difference between a commercial prep and a feature prep is much more involved. There's a lot more setting up of your cart, of how many monitors you're going to use, what type of waveform, how everything's going to be cabled. Are you recording any data remotely from the camera, or is everything being recorded on the camera? There's a lot of different types of preparation that you would do for a feature, depending on the type of conditions and the locations of where you're going to shoot. If you're on a stage the whole time, well, that's a whole different type of situation. If you're on a boat in the ocean, there's a lot of different variables that you better think ahead about. Will you have power on the boat? Will salt air cause corrosion into any of your hardware, any of your hard drives? There's a lot of different scenarios. Will you be in the desert? Will it be 114 degrees? Or will it be 30 degrees below zero? I've shot in the desert where it's 120 degrees. I've been to the Arctic Circle where it's negative 30 and you're in the snow with a generator. So it just depends on what your circumstances are and how you approach it and how you approach your prep. A lot of times in feature films there will be pre-production meetings, which I'm a big fan of, because I want to get sort of first-hand one-on-one interaction with people instead of dealing with emails and phone calls. And I think the way the world's moving is this sort of non-personal contact where you never even have to talk to people before a job. But I think you can learn a lot about a person, their work etiquette, their work style, their work requirements, by meeting them in person. In a feature film, a lot of times there's pre-production meetings where you'll go and have 20 people around the table just talking about your editorial workflow, what your on-set hard drive requirements are, what your deliverables will be for sound. Will sound be put onto the hard drives with the camera image? Will it be separate? What time do these drives go in? What time is the cutoff? What format they need to be in? What will be sent back to you in the form of digital dailies on a internet type of situation, like a DAX system where you get your dailies on the internet? Or will they be DVDs that will be delivered to the set every day that will be distributed around? All those things are discussed and are very important to make sure that you have a smooth workflow once production starts. And I think a lot of times in feature films we'll do some camera testing where the DP will come in to the prep and maybe an actor will come in and do some wardrobe, hair, makeup tests. Then that gives everybody a chance to shoot with the cameras that you're going to shoot with, use the filters you're going to use, take the media and then send it through the whole pipeline, just as you would when production will start on day one. So it gives you advance warning to find out if there's any glitches or trouble in the pipeline that you can correct before actual day one production starts.
On a $40 million movie and above, usually the camera assistants get 2 weeks, and I'll get like a week and a half. And maybe the first 3 days won't be me there. It'll be me having meetings or me talking with people at home or whatever it may be. But 2 weeks really is the norm, I would say, approximately. The bigger the movie, the more prep days you get, unless it's really technical, like a lot of car underwater. You have to build stuff, you know. I did a movie where we had to I built Pelican cases, which house the camera processor units, batteries, wireless, to be able to throw them into the back of a trunk and put the camera through a fiber optic cable into the front seat with the operator and have the director see what's being shot, because we couldn't afford to have these custom-made cars because we already had these other custom-made cars, and that's what you need to do, you know, for there. But you know, and then we did a backpack, the whole soft backpack thing in rain, in hot Michigan temperatures. I mean, you got to take temperature into consideration, what that's doing to your image as well. It's just stuff like that. It's really important. It's terribly important, and it's going to guarantee success because you're doing it up front. You're saying, oh, hey, I anticipate this problem, therefore we can solve this problem, as opposed to wait until on the day, you know, first week, just get murdered or fired, which happens too. And it may be something completely out of your control, but that's why I fight for preps. Even if it's just me meeting with people, having conversations, and honestly, I'll resolve. What's the field of view of a GoPro in comparison to 4perf Super 35? And you're like, oh, I know that answer. That's 3 times the difference. Okay, so all right, then a 12 millimeter is going to be a 36 millimeter. Yeah, that's the difference. Boom. Now they can go make decisions. Now they can do what they need to do. And that's really, I mean, it can be as simple as that. But really, it's to test out everything, test the workflow, test what you can, get the cables you need, plug in everything. Sometimes it takes you 2 hours. Sometimes it takes you 12. And it all has to do with volume, what you have to deal with, and how much information you're getting. But I think it's important that a camera assistant and a DIT prep. If you're in features, then what I like to do is I like to take, and that's where workflow is really important. I will make a couple different workflows. I'll do, okay, let's assume that I can have a conversation. DP says we're going to have 3 cameras. We're shooting 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, all right? And the editor wants this DNX format, and we're going to make LTOs, okay? I'll take that information, and I will figure out what our data rate will be, how many mags I'm going to need, how many hard drives I'm going to need to transport between myself and set, if we use these LUTs, this set of LUTs, these LUTs will translate with the DI system that we're using later for the conform. Okay, so now I'll take all of these factors and I can tell you exactly how much we need to spend.
As a DIT, we're always learning, and I tell my wife, oh, I have to go to school today and do my homework, because if a new camera comes out, well, it has a 290-page manual. Well, I have to read that whole manual, 290 pages. So when I go into a prep, then I know this button does that, this button does this, how do I change my time code, how do I do this? You can't figure all that out in a 4-hour prep. You know, that takes a lot of homework ahead of time. And to be able to take the files that camera generates and transcode them, that takes a lot of homework too. You know, what works, what doesn't work, will integrate with this software. Does it work with Thunderbolt? Does it not work with Thunderbolt? Is it USB 3 or it's only eSATA because this doesn't go with that? And you have to figure out all these things ahead of time so you don't just show up at the job site and say, oh, I don't have the right cable, or you bought the wrong hard drives. Well, if they bought the wrong hard drives, that's your responsibility because you didn't tell them what to do. And if they don't listen, then that's on them. But you have to do a lot of homework as a DIT to make sure that you come properly equipped with the right cables, the right hard drives, the right card readers. All that stuff is extremely important because you can't tell production, oh, I can't do your dailies today because I don't have this cable. You have to have all that stuff, and you have to have doubles of all your cables because one of them might go down. So a lot of people will have double computers. In case one goes down, they have a backup. They'll have double cables for everything. They'll have double everything, just a double redundancy in case something breaks. They have.
Yeah. Okay, camera A is on 50. And we're using, this ND. ND9 or whatever it is, we're on a Hawk and we're using this. And then everyone would know what that means. So you're on that, you're on that, you're on that. This is the coverage. Okay, so it's got to be this. Wham, wham, wham. All the filters go in. Shh, done. Okay, has everyone seen the same thing? Yeah. Why? Because we've already done the work. That's what the prep's for. Yeah, it's hardcore work. It's, and we've got everything. Yeah, we've got everything. You sure we got everything? Okay, what can we get rid of? Because they're going to grumble. But what's absolutely necessary? And then you assist and you make sure that that conversation doesn't come up. That monitor doesn't look the same as this monitor. That camera's bias is different from that one. Why? You don't want to have those discussions or those conversations. Everything's the same. Everything looks great. Then everyone can concentrate on just the creativity, not the technical. So just get rid of the technical.
And then I need to talk to the editors to find out if they're going to be editing on a Final Cut system, if they're going to be editing on a Premiere system, whether they're going to be doing something completely off the edge or maybe doing an Avid system or something like that. This way, if I'm doing transcodes, I know what they need and to find out, whether they're going to be doing an XML-based workaround. So if I'm giving them a low-res version so that they can cut really quickly and then do their color correction and so on and so forth, or if they plan on using the files that I give them. Because if they plan on using the files that I'm giving them, then I have to do something that's HQ, and that's either 422 or 444 or 420, depending on what camera we're using.
Well, post-production, our conversation starts off with, what do you need from me? Are you looking for, pretty much the same thing. You're looking for dailies, are you looking for Samsung dailies, and what am I doing? Am I doing Final Cut, ProRes dailies? Am I doing Avid, MXF dailies? And what codec am I using? Am I using a DNX HD 115? Am I using 36? Or am I using ProRes 444? Or am I using ProRes HQ or ProRes Lite? So those are the conversations I have with post. Typically, I want to know how best to hand off to them so they can get their job done quickly. Because the last thing you want is a snag in the workflow. And if I can be an aid to them having a snag-free workflow, then my job is done. So as many questions as need to be asked. How do you like your drives? What drives work best for you in terms of connectivity? Are you using eSATA connections to your equipment back at the lab, or using USB 3? Usually those are the two typical ones now. I mean, it was FireWire 800 at one point, but now with the bigger cameras, the bigger file sizes, FireWire 800 is a little slow to try to keep up with data management and moving files back and forth. So basically, those are the questions I have.
But I do want to, like I said previously, I want to get rid of as much bias between all the cameras as possible, so I can do less work, more creative work, less like polishing, getting to a stage where I can then create a look. No, I just want to create the look. Don't want to have to do any work. So you do all the heavy lifting, making sure everyone's got the same. You've done that in prep anyway. You've written out a little cheat sheet for everyone. This ND with this one, that's your camera C, that's your camera A, that's your camera B. That's as far as you can go. Camera A is shooting this, okay guys? So you know what you're doing. It's on 56, 5.6 or whatever it is. And we're using, you know, we're on a 50. Everyone knows what that means. They look at the, okay, well, done. Everyone set up their cameras. Everything's looking the same because all the heavy lifting was done during pre-prep and prep by the first and the second AC and assisted by me.